Good morning, everyone. Popping in to have a quick chat about some rumours, an update about where we may be by the end of the year. So I thought I'd have a chat with that. I noticed Sony Alpha Rumors posted a link this morning. I'll get heaps and heaps of questions for people asking, you know, where are we with the A7000 or the A7S III? Lens updates and things like that. And I noticed they gave a quick update this morning. I thought we'd have a quick discussion about that. Don't think it'll be a very long live, but you never know once we get started. But I thought we'd go through it all together anyway. So say hi in the chat. I'm going to give it a few minutes to let people get online because this is way earlier than I normally pop on. So let me just say hi. So if you are coming in a little bit later, just pop on to where you see the Oastler images sign, because this just at the moment is just a bit of pre-show. I'm just going to wait until a few more people pop on. Like I said, it is very early. If it is a bit early for everyone else to just pop on, because I've only given about 5 minutes notice, so I don't know how many people we're going to get on this. You can obviously leave your questions down below, and we can get back to you there as well. I might just put an announcement in the photography videography school. Bear with me for a second, just so that they know that I'm online there as well. Where are we? I always tend to put on the photography videography school. I'll just switch over so you can see what I'm doing anyway. In here that I'm live. That way people will tend to know you know what's going on. Check out the winner for this week too in our photography and videography school. I asked for balancing flash against ambient light, and I thought, wow, what a perfect picture that is. That was Stuart, I think. Fantastic. Let me just check Facebook there. Yeah, it's Stuart James. That was his image, and I thought it just balanced it beautifully, and it's so relevant to sort of what we're looking at the moment. I do a weekly competition. Like I said, this week's one was balancing ambient with flash, and I thought that he did that beautifully. He said he used a snoot to light up Santa walking towards the castle, but I thought it was such a great image. If you haven't thought about joining us, please join us in that group. It is photography and videography school. You can see it written up there. You have to use the "and" written like that, not the word "and." But please join us on there. We have, I think there's around about 3,000, nearly 3,300 people now are on this site. And it's really fantastic. Like, everyone's sharing stuff from everything to do with video, things like that. You know, we've got Michael showing some time-lapse images that he's put on this morning with the G Master 24. We've got Aaron talking about shooting minimal gear, things like that. Got discussions going on about the A7000, etc. We've even got some stuff here saying that the Canon next IBIS, the next EOS R is potentially going to have 5-axis IBIS. So we've got a discussion about that in here this morning. So yeah, so please join us in there because it just is fantastic. Gerald's sharing some older images that he actually took here of Joe Frazier. So it's just fantastic. So please join us there, guys. I'd love to see you on board. Let me just come back to the chat to see who's here. So who've we got? Casper's here. Wait, what? It's just an overview, Casper. Paul's saying greetings from North Carolina. Boston's saying greetings from Copenhagen. I'm just going to change my glasses so I don't have to look up so much. Boston said greetings from Copenhagen midnight. Well, good to see you actually here. That's why I thought I'd do this a bit earlier so some others may get the chance to join me for a live. Gary Dean said, wow. Tovino said, wow, Euro times. Yeah, I do try to change it sometimes. Sometimes I'll work them at my night, which gives the Euro people times to pop in as well. I do try and change it all around so that, you know, everyone else can pop in, because the time that I usually go on the Friday, and that still is always around that time, is hard for the Europeans and even the Aussies sometimes. So that's why occasionally I like to pop in early or a little bit later for you guys, particularly in Europe. Mike says, howdy Dave and crew. G'day Mike, good to see you in here. Gary Dean says, love the Santa shoot. I know, how good was that Santa shoot? It was so good. G'day Dion, good to see you in here. Richard saying hi. Sue says, greetings from Denver. G'day Sue. Chris says, hello David, nice but cool in Los Angeles, but a good Corona day. Yeah, I'm not having a treat today. I've got to get some work done. So I didn't do it yet, but I certainly will be having a drink with you guys Friday, that's for sure. Or a coffee, I should say. Johnson City Aerial Photography said, Tennessee in the house, what's up? Dave Woodward said, hey Dave, Merry Xmas buddy. Same to you, Davey. Gilbert says, hi, I've made a live show, it's been a while. Yeah, good to see you in here, Gilbert. Luca said, hi from Italy. Mike said, Sue, greetings from the Boulder. Caesar said, what autofocus settings can I use for focus and recompose on my A7 III? Flexible spot works very well if you want to do that, recompose. Kerry, my wife, obviously, who often second shoots with me, she did it for a long time where because we came from Nikon, and that's the way the Nikons used to work, she really did like still working that way with flexible spot. And she will just basically move the spot around to where she wants it, and then she'll focus with back button, focus, and then recompose the shot from there, and that's the way she tends to work. But now, she's now starting to trust the Sony autofocus modes. I've finally got her to believing that she can use something like wide area or something like that and face detector IAF and trust what the camera is going to give her. It did take her a long time to trust it. She just wasn't comfortable with it, and she's finally just now starting to work with it. And that could be the difference of, because we originally shot with the A7 IIIs, we came from the D4Ss and went to the A7 III, and the focus did lack a little bit coming from that camera. She didn't quite trust it enough. So it's interesting that she now is starting to trust it. But now she's using the A7 III and the A9, so the focus is so much better. But she is now starting to trust it. And I do say that to people now, that the focusing in these new cameras, particularly the A7R III, the A7 III and the A9, is so good that you can trust the autofocus most of the time to get great results. The only times really when I go out of that is when I'm using a gimbal and I want to use center focus, because I want to try and maintain that it doesn't grab something on either side, and I'll keep the subject that I'm actually focusing on the center. Or if I'm doing group work, I'll then go to flexible spot and use the spot in the middle of the group. In other words, if there's 3 rows, I'll focus in the second row. So I hope that answered it for you, Caesar. T. James Photography said, hello, David. I'm Terrence. Love your channel and your input. Got my coffee, wink, wink. And I'm ready. Well, it's only 10 o'clock in the morning here, so it's a bit early for me to have coffee yet, guys. Well, it's probably not, is it? But I'm gonna go and have a real coffee, actually a cafe latte after this. Wait till you see the new shirts that Delta Dave sent me. I've sent me some new Sony shirts, and they're grey this time. So well, I'll leave it. I'll talk to you about it when I get the next shirts. And I've also got, I think, 1 or 2 to give away. So I might have to come up with an exciting competition. Tom's here as well. Oops, where were we? Tom's here. Altrix also here. Tim, hi from the UK. Good to see you here, Tim. Gary says, hello from Palm Springs, California. Viking Creative Studio says, what's up, everyone? Ordering my 3rd Sony cam tonight. What are you buying, Viking? Let us know what you're buying. MX Box Pro says, hi from Sydney. Wayne Bernier says, hello, David. How's the coffee taste? Well, I'm not having any. I'm going to have a real coffee. I mean, not a, coffee, a real coffee shortly after this, actually. I'm going to go down and get my morning coffee straight away. I tend to go down every morning around the same time. Due to the fact that I work from home, being full-time doing this, remember, I too also came from a lecturing background, so I lectured in university for 20-odd years. So I do sometimes miss the interaction. So what I'll do is when I'm doing my social networking, like Instagram and Facebook and all that sort of stuff, I'll go down and sit down and have a coffee. And I do that every morning around about 10 o'clock. And that will be my, what I call, marketing time. So I'll sit there and at least I've got people around me, and the same people know me every day, and I have an interaction with them. So it's not just me sort of, sitting down here in my studio on my own. And that gets me out of the house. And I market that way all the time. So that's where I'll do all my marketing and things like that with a real coffee. Joel said, hello from New Jersey. Mark says, Philadelphia here. Sue said, actually in West Arvada. Jerry says, hello, Dave. Greeting from Monroe, Connecticut. James said, hi from Mississippi. Mark said, hello. We'll start in a minute, guys. I'm just waiting for people to get on. Jason says, g'day, David. G'day, Jason. Michael says, hi, David and everyone. Oops. Where are we? I hate it when it jumps like that. I just want to say hi to everyone. Where were we? I think I was down there, actually. Yeah, Johnson City said, Gary, I grew up in the 80s in Palm Springs, went to Vista del Monte Elementary. He's just talking to someone else. Leanna says, hi, Dave. Greetings from Washington. Hi, Leanna. Tony Wong says, good morning from Singapore. Gary Stevens says, what's up, David? Just chilling with you guys for the moment. I thought I'd go over an article with you that I just saw on Sony Alpha Rumors, sort of summarising where we are with all the rumours coming up, and we're going to go through that in a couple of minutes once we start. I'll give it about another 2 or 3 minutes. Gary says, what's up? Dean says, hi. Gilbert says, focus and recompose and back button. Sounds rather long-winded if you're shooting Sony, yeah. Like I said, though, Gilbert, Kerry used to love that because she came from Nikon, and at the time, that's the way we used to work with our Nikon cameras. But now she has changed, and she's starting to trust it now. Mark said, Caesar said, thanks, yep. Mark said, hey, man, I'm a wedding videographer. My wife is a photographer. Do you think we need to learn Fusion still? Yes, you do. And like I'm saying, I really do believe the future is Fusion, which is a mixture of stills and video. I think if you don't go down that track, within 5 years, you're going to be struggling to find work at all. So my suggestion to you is become an expert at one, and then as soon as you're confident with one, learn the other. And it certainly has made my business grow, I can tell you that. And I definitely think it's the future. So yes, I do believe that's the case. Mark. Lack said, hi. Gary says, hey, David, put a Mickey grip on my A7R III and it made it so much easier to hold. Not a fan of battery grips. Yeah, I've got grips, Gary. I've got the Sony grips. I've got 2 of them. I've got one for the A7R II and I've got one for the A9 or the A7 III. I don't use them, though. I really probably should sell them. I just don't like having a big camera anymore. I like the lightweight. And, you know, this is the A9, but I don't mind. I quite like just the size that this is. Obviously, I mean, I'm only short. I'm only 5'6", but if you had a larger hands, I suppose you might want a bigger grip so that you can have, you know, your hand down on the bottom like that. But I just love how lightweight that is. I don't want anything that makes the camera heavier. Kevin says, hello, David. Mick says, if I use APS-C lenses on my A7 III in crop mode for video use only, will I lose any light? No, I don't think you do. I haven't noticed any difference when I've used it. It's the focal length. I believe the f-stop is the f-stop no matter what it is. Now, someone may be able to talk about that in detail if they really understand it. I'm just trying to think about that from the aspect of it. I do believe a 1.8 aperture is a 1.8 aperture. I know it tends to, it's the focal range that actually changes, I believe. I think the amount of light that's getting in is still the same amount of light, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure they will. Haz says, hello everyone, I saw this post on the Facebook group. David, what do you think about APS-C pricing will be the A7000? I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Greetings from Barbados. Everyone's just saying hi. All right, well, we better get going anyway. Paul says he's 5'7", close. Yes, we are, Paul. Let me just put show start. All right, now I wanted to talk to you about a lot of people actually are... Oh, I better bring up the Oastler Images logo, actually. G'day everyone, just cutting in here in case if someone doesn't want to watch all of the pre-show that I actually just posted. Today was just really, it's going to be a discussion. Sony Alpha Rumors this morning posted what they call a recap of all the rumours that have sort of been going around and where we are and things like that. And I thought we could have a discussion about this live. I don't know how long it's going to go, but a lot of people keep asking me, and I don't mind that. Like I said, I love answering questions with you guys about where we are with the A7000, the A7S III, etc., etc. Well, they put out a list of sort of recapping everything, and I thought we'd go through that together. and discuss it really in the live chat, and I thought it'd be the best way to do it. Originally, I was just going to do it as a video, but then I thought, no, it might be good to do it with you guys live. That way, if there's any questions you guys want to ask, we can sort of open it up to that as well. I'm going to have a coffee after this, actually, a real coffee. Am I a bit hot on that, or is it all right? I always can never tell. Sometimes the light builds up. I might just turn it down just a touch. So, this article, I'm going to scroll over to it and show you here, is this article that they put up this morning. It just says Rumors Recap. And the interesting thing is here that they're starting off with talking about the A7000. And they've said down here, Sony officially confirmed that a new high-end APS-C camera is in the works. And recently, Sony registered a new mirrorless camera in Asia. Now, that's apparently this one that they're talking about up here. And they believe, Sony Alpha Rumors believes that this is the new A7000. And they're saying down here that we've discussed this before, that it's not an A6500 successor. So I think what you're going to find is, as Sony have done all along, you're going to see them keep the A6300, the A6500, and then the A7000 will be added there. Now, if you have any questions relating to this, guys, fire away, because I will come back to it. So basically, they are going to keep the other cameras. The A7000 is going to be a standalone camera, so it's going to be a camera that's more high-ended, listed way up the top, probably like the A9 is in the A7 series. And I think that's how they're talking about that. But if you look at it down here, they're actually saying through there that it's not an A6500 successor. It has a new design with EVF in the center, which is just like the A7S III. That's what they're talking about. So it's going to look basically, or the A9, like this. So it's going to have that there rather than how the A6500 has it at the end. That's what I'm using now to actually shoot here. So I think you're going to find that the A7000 is going to have a body. It may even be the exact same body as this. There's no reason why they can't use this. Now, I know a lot of people are whinging and complaining about they don't want it to go large. Well, if that's the case, you probably will have to stick with the A6500. Remember, the smaller the bodies are with these, the more chance of building up heat that you're going to get in the camera, and particularly if they're dealing with 4K 60p, which is probably this camera will have, it needs a bigger body, and that's one thing that we have to understand. And I don't still see the A7S III body as being really that large. I mean, I actually think it's good, but I came from the big Nikon cameras. If you look down here too, they're saying it is a new high-end APS-C camera, so they're going to market this as a high-end one. That's why it's going to be a complete number, which is A7000. So it doesn't look like it's going to be an incremental update. It's going to be a big jump in the update, and they're calling it a mini A9, and probably 20 frames per second. And it's interesting because I didn't think it would get that, but now that the camera has been delayed so long, I wouldn't be surprised if it does have that 5.6 million dot EVF. I thought originally that EVF was going to be solely with the A7S III. Remember, we saw that early on in the year, and I discussed that and showed you how that all worked. And that really is going to be an incredible EVF, particularly if you're dealing with manual focusing with manual focus lenses. Because when you punch in and do things like that, if you're going to get critical focus, it is a real advantage to have a really sharp EVF. And so having that on there, that's why I thought we'd only see this in the A7S III. Excuse me. So looks like, talking about this, we may get that on the A6500. I'm just going to get a water. Not used to talking so early. So I'm excited. If they give us that, once again, it's another great thing that we're going to get. I don't mind the EVF. My A7 III is actually in the other room, but I don't mind the EVF on the A7 III. The only time I really notice the difference is because I do use both cameras, and I'm using the A9 and the A7 III when I'm shooting particularly events and weddings and things like that, then I notice the difference in the EVF, and it is quite pronounced. But if I'm not using the cameras together, I don't notice that the EVF is less quality. But remember, I don't really do manual focusing in video, so that is one big thing. If you're a videographer particularly and you do like doing manual focus, having that much better EVF is a big plus. Like I said, I don't particularly notice much difference if I'm using both cameras. I will if I sort of put one camera like that and then look at the other one straight away. Then I'll notice a difference in resolution. But apart from that, I haven't really noticed. But having said that, putting that better sensor in the A7000 would be a great thing. Now, we were originally hoping to get that before Christmas, but obviously that's now not going to happen. It looks now like we may be waiting longer. Now, I noticed that even on that article, Sony Alpha Rumors haven't said when they're expecting that we'll get it. But hopefully, they are saying, though, that they think this will be the next camera due to the fact that they did announce that number was just released, as you see through here. So because now, basically, they've said that this has now been registered, this camera. Usually after a camera has been registered, it doesn't take too long to get the camera actually released. So we'll probably see this sometime, we're hoping, early in the new year. And that's what I'm hoping is. Now, I'm still haven't decided. That the hard part is when they're talking about this next story, the A7S III, they're now saying sometime in the first half, so they've even pushed that a little bit further along. The hard part for me is I do need another video camera. Due to the fact that I'm doing Fusion, I do need another video sort of one, and I still want it to take stills because that's the way that I now like shooting, but I do need another video camera. The hard part for me running this as a business is I don't really need two cameras. Now, what I've got to make a decision on is if the A7000 comes out and it does meet all my needs, do I then buy that camera? Or should I wait and see what the A7S III has and then make a decision on which one I want? I know what worries me is if I buy the A7000 and then they release the A7S III and that is some incredible camera, I'm going to regret buying it. I suppose I can sell the A7000 if I want to work that way, but it's hard to know which way to go. So I'm still deciding yet what I'll do, and it's hard until these cameras are announced. There is one thing that this is the reason why I'm saying I do believe that the A7000 is going to be released first, because Sony have to answer the X-T3. The X-T3 is the best APS-C camera out there at the moment. There's no doubt about that, it is much better than what the A6500 has. And they're saying, well, I'm saying that they need to answer that. And the only way they can really answer that now is to release an A7000. It's probably going to have a very similar sensor because I believe that it's a Sony sensor anyway. But Sony will probably tweak that we'll get some other features, which is going to be interesting. But they do need to answer that, so it's only a matter of time before that's done. I suppose the A6500 is still selling well, just like the A7 III is, and that could be a reason why Sony haven't released the A7S III at this stage. Or are they waiting for Panasonic's announcement to be brought out and the next Canon? Like I just mentioned to you a minute ago, there's rumours that the next Canon EOS R is going to have 5-axis stabilization. Now, if that Canon is released and they have 5-axis stabilization, if it does have a dual card slot and they improve the focus, remember that does have an articulating screen, so that then becomes quite an interesting camera. As long as Canon don't do the usual and hold things back, like giving us a ridiculous 1.8 crop again and things like that, which they may do to protect their other cameras. So that's the A6500, the A7000. So it looks like the A7000 we're going to see probably in the first quarter. I'm hoping that it's announced very, very soon after Christmas. Just let me put my watch on silent too so I don't get notifications. So that's that one. Now, I'm going to come back to the chat in a minute, and we'll go through the whole lot. The next one is the A7S III, and they're still saying that They do say it's going to definitely have 4K 60p and 422 10-bit external. Whether that, I'm hoping we may get it internal, but it looks like what they're saying there is we're going to get external. It'll obviously have that 5.6 million dot EVF, and it'll also have the new stack sensor. Now that's a great advantage because clearly then we'll have less rolling shutter and things like that. And they're saying now that the announcement in the first half of 2019. Also, they've said there that Sony have also said that they're going to have some unexpected features. Unclear of what they could be. I mean, no one knows yet what that's going to be. Is it going to have an articulating screen? I doubt it, but I mean, I would just be, you know, tickled pink if that was the case. It may have an internal ND though, which really would make me interested in that camera, particularly if it had an internal ND. Are they going to say give us something like 4K 120? It's possible, but we just don't know. We've just got to wait. But what worries me about them saying that now is they're now saying in the first half. Originally it was the first quarter. Now they're saying in the first half. And like I said to you, I really do need another camera, and I am starting to get a little bit frustrated actually in how long this is starting to take. I know I shouldn't be. It's not that long ago that they released the A7 III. But I do, like I said, I do want another camera, and I'm really hoping something comes out fairly soon. I just think they're holding back a little bit due to the fact of what Panasonic and what Canon may announce. We know what Nikon have announced because clearly they've already announced their two cameras. But we just don't know yet what Canon's going to announce for their second camera, and that's going to come out sometime next year. But I am hoping that Sony don't hold back too long. I would love them to announce something fairly soon after, after the new year. But I do think they'll probably, I don't think they'd announce both cameras together. I don't think they'd announce the A7000 and the A7S III together. That's why I think we'll probably get the A7000. They're going to give that a bit of a leeway first to get some sales and things like that moving. And then eventually we'll get something like the A7S III a little bit later on next year. But we just don't know at this stage, and it's getting a little bit frustrating. Let me know too in the box whether you're getting frustrated as well, like I am. I'm just a typical geek suffering from a bit of gas that I want, but it's not. It is for me a business decision. I do need another video camera, and I'm sort of waiting for that. I'm not keen on using my A7R II anymore due to the fact that it only has the one card slot. So I really do want to replace that. And occasionally if I'm doing fusion in the weddings and I have to use multiple cameras, I have to use my A7R II as a camera, and I want another camera where I can use dual card slots. Remember also, the second that I'm doing fusion, which means I'm holding two cameras at the same time, well then I lose the A9 or the A7 III because I'm using one of those on the gimbal. I have to rely on a fast focusing. I suppose I could use the A7S A6500 on the gimbal, but I just love the full frame look, and that's one of the problems for me. I do love that full frame look. So that's the A7S III, and I'm going to come back to the chat, guys, and we'll go through all of these shortly. Sony prime lenses, they've listed down here that 35mm 1.8G and the 135 GM are on the roadmap. So they are still saying they're on the roadmap, but boy, are they taking their time with those ones. But I suppose we can't complain. If you think about it, Sony have just announced the 24 GM, and that's one lens that I was talking about in the photography videography school this morning that eventually I will buy. When it's in stock, I will buy that. I'm not sure when that will be. I've heard rumours February until you can get them in stock. So I probably will get that one. I will also love to look at a 135 as well. But I don't need a 35mm. I've already got the 2.8. I've already got the 1.4 Sony lens, so I'm quite happy with what I've got. But if they do bring out a 35mm, if they do bring out this lens, the 35 1.8, if that's as good as the Sony 85 1.8, well, that will be incredible. I mean, that would really be an amazing combination, particularly for people that haven't got the funds to buy the GM lenses. And the Sony 85 1.8 is a beautiful lens. I actually think I would buy that now if I was just buying it. I bought the Batis originally. The only reason why I bought the Batis because at the time Sony had no other lens that was the 85mm focal length, and I love that focal length. So that's an issue. So I had to buy the Batis. If I was buying now, I probably would just buy the Sony 85 due to the cost of that lens and how sharp it is. I do still love the Batis look though. I think it does have that Zeiss pop, but it's not that different. And it also does have stabilization and weather sealing. So that is another issue as well if you're using it in hand-holding video, which I occasionally do. But let me know whether you think you'd be interested in a 35 1.8 as well. Like I said, if it was as sharp and as light as the 85, it's going to be a great camera, a great lens to have. Guys, too, I would really appreciate a thumbs up because this was not a scheduled live. More people then may pop in, so I really would appreciate it if you could give me a thumbs up. This next part is talking about Sony telephoto lenses. They're saying here that Sony officially confirmed a new telephoto lens is coming soon. No specs have been shared though, so they're not saying what it's actually going to be. But they have found patents for a 500mm and the 600 5.6. And there are unconfirmed rumours about a possible 200 to 600 FE lens. We are really spoiled now with lenses, and I really do believe now we've got more, really, unless you're like a wildlife shooter or into real sport shooting, and now we've got the 400 2.8, but obviously the lenses that we're still missing are these very long ones, like I mentioned, the 500 and 600. They will be coming. Eventually, you're going to have everything that you'll need. It's only just a matter of time. And Sony have done an amazing job. If you think how long they've been out, with how many lenses now we've got in the system, and the quality of their lenses, we really are blessed, I believe, in Sony land now. If you compare that to, say, what Nikon have got and what Canon have got in their new lens mounts. Sony 1.2 primes. They are talking about that. I did discuss that in detail when the Sony manager was discussing those 1.2 primes. I don't think we'll see 1.2, but we might. Well, we may see 1.2. I think what you might find is, initially they said they could do f1 lenses. Now, this is what that Sony manager says, and I think this was to sort of have a go back at Nikon bragging about their new lens mount. And Sony was saying there's no reason why we can't have an f1. Now, that's proven because we already have 0.95 lenses that work on Sony, and they work well. They are always autofocus though, but even the Nikon fast lenses, that was an a manual focus lens as well. But they are saying that they could do a 1.2, and I think that's probably what you'll find. Now, I would dearly love an 85 1.2. If they announce that, I probably would buy that straight away. I'd love to have an 85 1.2. In fact, I've thought about buying the Canon 85 1.2. I just love that look. Now, not to use all the time, but just occasionally to get that look. And I would love it if Sony did announce one. Yes, it's going to be big and heavy. It's not going to be a lens that I would use all the time, though. It's going to be a lens that I would just grab out of my bag occasionally to do just a look that I wanted to achieve. But they are saying that there's no reason why they can't do it, and they probably will do one to show that it's possible. We're not sure when yet, though. What else have we got? New full-frame sensors. Well, obviously, we've got the two sensors that were announced. This 60-megapixel 8K sensor. Panasonic today, too, there's a rumour in the Panasonic Rumors site that they are going to produce a Panasonic L, I think it's L, isn't it, series camera in 2020 that's going to have the 8K sensor. So believe me, guys, when I say 8K is coming, it is going to be coming. It's only a matter of time. I know a lot of you don't want it. Remember, you do not need to use it if you don't want it. But just don't have blinkers on thinking it's never going to come. It will come. And I said there's big advantages to doing that too, that you can grab stills off the off your frames as well. Just pull a still out of the video that you're doing and you get about a 30-odd megapixel file size. It will be incredible. So that is coming, and Panasonic, there's a rumor about that for 2020 this morning. The other thing they're saying here as well is there's another sensor, which is the 36 megapixel sensor. Now, we're not sure whether any of these are going to get into the A7S II. We've got to wait and see what happens there, or even an A9 II. Potentially it may be an A9 II. The 60 megapixel one could potentially be an A9R. It's just going to be interesting to see which way these go, or perhaps, you know, it'll be the next A7R camera announcement. So they are definitely coming. I mean, there's a lot of talk now about those 8K sensors and those things I've discussed in previous videos. The other thing too is talking about Tamron. Tamron have said, or there's rumors that there's a 100 to 400 lens going to be coming out, and a 70 to 200 millimeter could be announced in early 2019, and I so hope that happens. If they can match, I haven't got my Tamron here, if they can match what my Tamron 28 to 75 millimeter lens gives in a 70 to 200, I just can't wait to see what that lens is. Now, I still love my Sony 70 to 200 f4, and I will not sell that. I adore that lens, but I will still probably buy the 70 to 200 2.8 Tamron lens if it's available. But I'm hoping that if that does happen, that Tamron look after me like they did last time, and I got a version of that way before it was announced, and I can do a review for you guys. So I'm sure that will happen. I'm sure they'll do it because they love what I did for them last time. I'm going to be honest with you guys like usual, but I do hope that happens. And if that's the case, if there is one in early 2019, I should be able to have reviews up fairly early in the new year as well. So that's exciting as well. And the final thing to discuss before I go and open up to all of your Q&A is that Sigma FE have also said that Sigma will announce the first full-frame lenses exclusively designed for mirrorless in 2019. And I'm excited to see what that is, because then hopefully they'll be a little bit smaller and lighter and things like that. They won't have to have the thing welded on the end, because they're going to be designed specifically for Sony mirrorless. So probably focus better in video, things like that. So that's a really exciting announcement, and I can't wait to see what Sigma do give us with that as well. So let's open it up to chat, guys, because I'd love to know. It's a lot to go through, but I just thought I'd share all of this with you all together. Let me go down to where we started. Where were we? I'm drinking with the lid on. I should be having a coffee with you guys. Okay, so let's go through some of this. Joe said, what's happening? Just chilling with you guys, Joe. Before I start to do some, well, I'm going to go out for a coffee, and then I'm coming back to do some wedding editing and some videos for you guys, actually. Hi from Massachusetts. Langston says, imagine THX sound during the logo. Yeah, shouldn't I? Chris said, big hands here, and I like the small Regal brackets. Mario said, I used to live in Salem. Mavfan says, light is light, so exposure is the same. Yeah, that's what I thought, Mavfan. I was pretty sure an f1.4 aperture is a 1.4 aperture, no matter whether it's on APS-C or whatever. What else have we got? Gary Dean says, having a coffee with you, David. Cheers, everyone. Cheers. G'day, Ben. How you going? Good to see you in here. Dion said, it's about time Sony retires some of their earlier models. Yeah, you're probably right, Dion. But I believe they are still selling a lot of those earlier models. Like even the 5000 series APS-C cameras are still selling. So I suppose as long as they're selling them, they're not going to get rid of them. MJ says, using the same body as A7 makes sense. It does to me as well, as particularly if they can give us the Z battery in that A7000 series, if it has the Z battery in there, which I think is a must. If they're going to give us a new A7000, it's got to have the Z battery. I would hate it if they kept the older battery. Viking Studio says Sony needs to add full-size HDMI. I agree with you. I love that when I had the GH5. The problem is these ports are terrible when you're dealing with, you know, they are terrible when you're dealing with using HDMI. I mean, they're that small. They're always sort of falling out. And I mean, I haven't heard of many reports of them breaking and things, but the full frame HDMI just locks in, and you don't need clamps to hold it in and things like that. And it is such a much better system. And I really do wish Sony would do that. Now, whether they can incorporate that on the body size like it is, though, I'm not sure. But I'm agree with you, Vikings. I would love that in Sony cameras. I hate the that mini HDMI. Paul said, unexpected feature global shutter. I don't think so. I think that's still a year or so away yet, or a couple of years away, Paul, but you never know. Mr. Wild says, what's the point of a full frame says APS-C camera? Why wouldn't you just buy a full frame camera? Well, due to cost. There's a few issues there, Mr. Woodgie. A lot of people like APS-C because you do get that crop. They're great for sports, for instance, or they're great for wildlife due to the fact that you have that crop built in. Now, yes, you can use a full frame on that, but you're not paying for that full frame. You're not paying for the full frame glass. APS-C lenses are cheaper. So if you do want to come in at the lower end, it's much cheaper to come in on the APS-C side than it is to come on the full frame side. Now, we're very lucky with Sony because unlike other manufacturers, unlike Canon, unlike Nikon, unlike Fuji, when we buy an APS-C camera for Sony, we can use those lenses on the full frame without an adapter. So we're very lucky that we can still use them. And that's one really great advantage. You can also use full frame lenses on the APS-C. But there is still a need for APS-C cameras. Gilbert said, I wish Sony would update the A5100 and the A6000, a real entry-level winner to compete with the M50. Yeah, that's a good point. Johnson City says the AI probably, Paul, along with animal IAF. Well, we will get that in the next cameras, that's for sure, because they've discussed that we were going to get that new AI and also the animal IAF. That's coming in future cameras. They may give it as an update to some cameras, like the A9, for instance. I wouldn't hold our breath on that, though. Lost Audio, I hope it's back. Gilbert said, agree, why get an APS-C of a full frame? MJ, because they need to do it for that camera size. Remember, the thing is, Gilbert, that if you're looking at Panasonic, that's micro four thirds. The GH5 is quite a big body size. I don't think you should get too involved in that it's a little bit of a bigger body, because it is a little bit bigger body. The XT3 is bigger than the Sony A6500. Viking Studio says smaller sensor, but in a full frame body will allow much better IBIS, and that's true. The Panasonic has the best. Well, I think at this stage the Olympus has the best IBIS that I've ever used. It really is like holding it on a tripod. It is incredible. The Panasonic GH5 is the next best, and that is also outstanding. APS-C is always going to be a little bit better because there's more movement, there's more room to move the actual sensor inside. The larger the sensor, obviously the harder it is to move that thing around. APS-C is much easier in that regard, so an A7000 might have much better IBIS, and that's true. Lux said cheaper lenses, etc. Exactly. Johnson said bigger body will handle the heat of 4K 60 and have better IBIS. Yeah, and that's another thing. I don't think they can give us 4K 60 in the size of the A6500. I think it would overheat in a matter of 60 seconds. They just can't do it. It needs to be in a bigger body. Look at the size of the GH5. G'day Hero, how are you? Jello said, I sold my C200 and wait for the A7S III. Jello says, the C200 was way too heavy and solely is killing the game. And I agree with you. I never ever regretted selling my Nikon, the D4S and things like that. They were big, heavy brick-like cameras. When you did a wedding on those, my back used to ache. I never regretted selling them, that's for sure. I'm not sure the focus of the XT3 is close to the A6500. Well, I looked at it in the store and I thought it was pretty good. I would have no issue using that focus at all. I actually thought it was amazing. I wouldn't say it was any better, but you've got to remember that the features in that camera alone, you're dealing with it's got 4K 60p, things like that. It's a much more advanced camera. It's got a better EVF. It is much better. I'm not saying that Sony can't beat that, and I think they can. I'm just saying at the moment, the XT3 is a better camera than the A6500. JB Media says, waiting for the A7S III, but won't mind getting the A7000 if the price is right. Canon, Fathom Rocket says, Canon will cripple something they always do, and you're probably right. I hope they don't for Canon users' sake, but they probably will. Jello says, I left Canon 2 weeks ago, and you're probably never going to regret it, Jello. I never regretted leaving Nikon. I really didn't. Mike said, give Dave some thumbs up. Thanks so much for saying that, Mike. Mark says, question is, will I hate myself for buying the A7000 and then they will trump it with the S? And this is the problem. This is what's going to happen to me. I bought the RX 100 Mark the 5, and then the next day they brought out the 6. And I was humming and hawing about taking it back, and I decided to keep it due to the fact that it had the internal ND and the 1.8 aperture, so I kept it. But that is what I'm worried about happening with if I buy the A7000 and then, you know, the A7S III comes out. But I could always sell it, I suppose. Someone asked earlier about price. I think they'll price the A7000 around that same price as the XT3. I don't think that they can go much more than that, because then you're starting to get into the A7S, the A7 III territory. So I think you're going to find that the A7000 is going to be priced at the XT3 price, which I think is what, about $1,500, $1,600? Is that right? Someone may be able to tell me. Jeff said, sorry, all this camera talk is giving me a headache. What about lenses? Will there be an 85 1.2? We just discussed that in the chat. I'm hoping so, Jeff. I'd love that. Like I said to you before, I've actually thought about buying the Canon 85 1.2. Johnson City said, yeah, I agree. Just a tad bigger for more features. Maybe an A9 dial for shooting modes too. And I suffer from tiny hands. I know, I adore the extra dial on the A9. I really do love that extra dial. And whenever I go back to my A7 III, I'm always looking for that. And I really wish they'd put that on all their cameras. It's fantastic. Jerry says it will probably be announced at CES 2119, maybe. Caesar said, what would be a good wide angle zoom for the A7 III? Well, I use the 16 to 35, Caesar, but I use the F4 version and I love it. I mean, obviously, if you've got the money, you can get the 16 to 35. There's also the 12, what is it, the 12 to 24, is it? I can't remember that one. There's that Sony lens as well. Someone may be able to tell me. There's that lens as well. I think it's a 12. Is it 12 to 35? I can't remember. But there's that one if you want to get it. But I use the 16 to 35 and love it. Viking said, I think the A7000 will be good and a good answer, but I'm pretty sure they're going to kill it with the A7S III. And they keep mentioning that camera that they're going to exceed expectations. So that's why I'm so hanging out for them to announce what that camera is going to have. I really am. Viking said, yep, the 16 to 35, the GM one will be amazing. I just haven't got that one. Rob said, is the E-mount too small for the future? Has anyone watched this from Camera Conspiracies? Yes, I think I did watch it. I don't think it is, no. I don't think it is at all. But I love Camera Conspiracies, though. We always enjoy watching his videos. Fathom Rocker said, A7S III will be a beast for sure. Kathy said, I want the A7S III so bad. Me too, Kathy. It's driving me nuts waiting. Johnson City said, I think the A7S III will give a nice new high bit rate. Externally. They do have to answer that side of it. Remember, when you're dealing now that cameras are offering 300 megabits per second, and the best you can get from Sony is 100 megabits. Now, I can tell you that when I shot with the Panasonic, I never upped the megabits because I couldn't justify the file size that they were giving me. I think the Panasonic went up to 300, if I remember correctly. I kept it at the 100 all the time. I don't notice any difference. Look, if you're a videographer and you're really trying to push this in post and you're using gradients all the time with skies and things like that, and you're pushing it and you're starting to get the gradients breaking down, you may find that having a much better bit rate is going to help you. But it's the same argument that people use for 8K, that these file sizes are going to be massive. Eventually, it's not going to be an issue when drives get big enough. Then everyone probably will shoot 300 megabits per second and 8K. But until we get to that point with hard drives getting larger, and we probably aren't that far away. Like I said to people last time, how much did a 1 gigabyte drive cost 5 years ago? Just think about it compared to what you could pay for, you know, what you get now. So it's definitely going to change. But I would probably still stick at this stage with shooting 100 megabit. I would love 4K 60p though. And I'd still be happy if that was 100 megabit, just to give me that ability to slow down the 4K footage. What else have we got? You think the A7S III will be 24 megapixel? Well, who knows, Hero? I mean, we just don't know what voodoo Sony are going to come out with. When you think that the 24 megapixel sensor now in the A7 III matches the A7S III at 12 megapixel, unless you're dealing with extremely high ISO, and when I'm talking about high ISO, I'm talking about, 128,000, something like that. Who knows what they can do with these new sensors? It's going to be really interesting to see. Fathom Rocker says 20, he thinks. I still hope we've got enough that I can use it as a fusion camera. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping there's enough megapixel that I can still use it for stills if I want to. So I'd love 20, 24, yeah. Michael says, hoping the bodies get more size, 2 card slots. I mean, 2 card slots for me is a must. If they bring out an A7000 with a 1 card slot, I probably won't buy it. Johnson City says something like 150 megabits per second of the F8 FS7 and hopefully Venice Color Science. You probably will surely see Venice Color Science in the A7S III. Well, I'm hoping they give us that. Ian says, I was frustrated, therefore I bought the A7 III. The Sony A7 III is selling well. I can't see the A7000 yet. And that's half of the problem, I think. They're still selling their cameras that much at the moment that I don't think Sony in any hurry to release anything. And that's a problem. Remember I said to you that I wanted Nikon and Canon to push Sony really hard with their mirrorless announcements, and the problem is they didn't. There's nothing that's been announced that's beaten Sony, and that's the problem. There's nothing from Nikon, there's nothing from Canon that has actually beaten the A7 III, and that's the problem. They really did bring out an amazing camera nearly 12 months ago. This is the issue that they've dealt with. Sony probably saw the writing on the wall and released that camera sooner than what they really wanted to, but blew everything out of the water, and even all these new cameras haven't been able to match it. And that's why you can't buy an A7 III now still. It really is an incredible camera. It just got the Camera of the Year for DP Review as well. Lux says A7S III would have to be at least 32 megapixel if the 8K specifications are true. Mark says Sony really needs the 105 and 135 market filled. Yeah, they'll look at that. I don't think we're going to see a 105 mark for a while, but they still keep talking about a 135 coming out. So I think that's probably going to happen. We just have to wait. Rest in peace, Lowlight. ISO 1 million. You just don't know what they're going to give us, do you, Hero? That's the thing, or luck. Mark says, I'm sure they will have that 600 soon, so am I. Gilbert says, I can't wait for the Sony 35 1.8. It probably would be a great gimbal lens as well, Gilbert. That would be a great one to stick on a gimbal. Boston just ordered the A6 500. Couldn't wait for the new A7000. Is going on holiday soon, but when it came, I'm going to get it and sell the A6 500 at that point. That's true. You can always do that, and the cameras do tend to hold their value reasonably well. Not as good as lenses, but at least you will get a lot of your money back. Yeah, Mark, that 135 GM will kill. Fathom Rocker says, I doubt they would put out an 8K camera. The sensor may be capable of 8K, but I doubt the camera will feature 8K. I could be wrong, though. It's not such a massive thing, though, when you think that the A9 and the the A9 and the A7 III already have 6K sensors in them, and they're downsampling. Who knows which way they may implement this? We're just going to have to wait and see. Don't discount it, though. Don't discount the fact that they may give 8K as an option externally. And that's something that we may be blown out of the water. No one may use it initially, but it may be there. Who knows, though, what we'll be using in 12 months. Hero said, good thumbs up, sir. Thank you so much, Hero. Langston said, 200 to 600. Are they trying to seduce Tony Northrup? Kathy said, I doubt 8K too. I don't see why they would pass 6K as a viable in-between. Update on the FE 1.8 to something less crappy. What else have we got? I noticed Photomic did a video this morning showing the A7 III against the Nikon, and he used the 51.8. And it was a pity that he used that lens, because I don't like that lens at all, the 51.8. Johnson City said they may surprise us with 5.2K, 6K external, who knows? It already reads off the 6K sensor, so why not just shoot it out? Sigma 60 to 600 is out. Hero says, can't wait for the 16 to 900mm 2.8. I am Durant. G'day, Tony. How are you? Johnson City says they really need to beef up the processing power to match these new features. They've announced like the animal IAF and the AI stuff they're discussing. And yeah, they will bring much better processors out, that's for sure. Hero says, wow, animal IAF is crazy. Yeah, and it is a needed thing. Great for wildlife. M Plateau said, thank you, sir. Nifty 50 isn't so nifty if it costs close to $1,000 like the 1.4 out there. Cheap and cheerful is the way to go. Make it like the 85 1.8. Yeah, I just don't like that 50 1.8. I don't like it at all. Kathy said, I want the 8K, but I would be surprised if it was in the A7S III. G'day, Panda. How are you? Hope your laptop's been fixed. You're having issues, I noticed. Kathy said animal IAF would be great as well. Johnson City said, where were we? Johnson City said A7000 will be 1499. That's what I'm thinking with you. I'm thinking around that 1500. Almost positive, maybe 1599 or 1699 because of the 4K 60. Where the A7 III is still supposed to be entry level, A7000 is supposed to be a more higher ended APS-C product. G'day Delta Dave, how are you? Thank you so much for the t-shirts. I'm going to wear them on Friday. What does it mean when they say the camera does 422? I don't know. Look, I'm not a videographer, so I'm not sure what that means. Someone else in the chat may be able to mention that. I know there's a difference between 421 and 422. If there's a videographer in the chat, could you please answer that? Because I'll read it myself. I have read it before. I just can't remember what it actually means. Panasonic is up to 300 and the Fuji is 200. Yeah, they talk about the bit rate, Panda. I am DeBrown said, should an A7S III have a flip screen, especially if it's meant for video? I'd love it if it does. I am DeBrown, but I'm not convinced we'll get it. I would be over the moon if they gave us a fold-out screen, though. G'day, Aaron. How are you? What else have we got? Michael said, A7000 will not sell at 1600 at all. Stupid move by Sony if they try that. Fuji could get away with it because they have nothing like that, like the A7 III for the 300 more. I disagree, Michael. I think if it has everything that's they're talking about, like if it is a mini A9, if they eliminate that rolling shutter due to a better sensor being in there, if it has 4K 60, I think they'd sell it for 1600. I'd buy it for 1600. Mark said Sony did say they would deliver a camera beyond expectations, so this could blow our socks off, and that's right. If they've said that, it has to be something pretty special. They didn't even say that about the A7 III, and look what they gave us with that camera. If you think what we got with the A7 III, and all it was, that's their introductory or their basic camera, so they're calling it. When they're talking about that they're going to meet or beat expectations, what are we going to get? This is why I'm so excited about what that camera could give us. So if the Panda saying Sony will deliver that voodoo. Dwayne said, "G'day, mate. How much difference do you think there is in the image quality of the A7 III versus the A7R III? Image quality, nothing. There's more megapixels though. The dynamic range is better in the A7 III than it is in the A7R III. But where you need the A7R III is if you need resolution, if you need to be shooting landscape and you need that detail, if you're shooting architecture and you need that detail, if you're shooting portraits and you need the detail to retouch. That's the area where the A7R III comes into it. And you can't beat that resolution. That's why medium format does so well, due to the fact that you can get these 50, 100 megapixel sensors. That's the area that you need resolution. Don't get confused between resolution and image quality. There's no difference. The image quality is equal between the two of them, I believe, but the dynamic range is better in the A7 III. I am DeBrown said, is a used A9 worth 3,754 Australian dollars today? That's fantastic, yes. I'm not sure how much they're still going for here. Tony. I still think they're $4,500 here, so yes, that's a good price. I even thought about buying another A9, but I'm going to hold off. Like I said, I need another camera. I adore this camera for video. I adore the A9 for video. But I just want to wait and see what the A7S III has. Mark said, oops. Oh, thank you so much, Dwayne, for the donation. Really appreciate that. Where were we? Mark said, what Sony FE lenses would you use on an A7000 back on and a gimbal? Well, I use this lens all the time in the gimbal. I use the 28 f 1 point. It's the 28, isn't it? I get confused. It's the 24, sorry. I use the 24 1.8. I adore that lens. That's the lens I'm shooting on now. That gives me the 35mm focal length, so that's really nice. You could also use the Sigma 16. That would be an amazing lens to stick on the gimbal as well if you want to use Sigma. I haven't tested that though to see how it works with autofocus with motion. I suppose there'll be reviews out there. I have thought about buying that lens because it's a reasonably priced lens. But that could be another great one. So the 16 would be really good on a gimbal on the A7000. That could be a great one. Like I said, I would love to use the 24 1.8. That's not a cheap lens though. I also use the 18 to 105 too on that as well, Mark. So I like that lens too. It's only an f4 though, but I do like using that on there because of its range. Mark says, the Panda says, oh hang on, where was it? Mark says, I have seen a used A9 for 3,500 AU. Yeah, that's a great price. Panda says, the A7 II has 701,000 actuations. So if this A-mount can live this long, then the A9 will live longer. Well, it should live forever if you don't use the mechanical shutter. Although it is rated very high, the A9 shutter though. I think, what is it, 500,000 actuations? So it should last for, yeah, forever basically. Hello from Nashville, Scott. Sam said, just for reference, Red cameras, 8K cinema camera body is a large box without lens and requires an actual blowing fan to keep their 8K sensor cool. Zoe Moment says, I'm starting to think we might get an XK as external recording to deal with overheating problem. Yeah, if they do give it to us, I think it will be 8K as well. There's no way we'll get it internal. Pelletier says, 400 off the A7R II on B&H. Is $2,798. It's a great price, isn't it, for the A7R at the moment? Adele says, how I'm seeing different chat on the left and right? Not sure. What have we got? Fabio says, hi David, thank you for your help with the Sony A7 III. No worries, Fabio. Always glad to be help. Rick says, g'day Dave and fellow Sony users. G'day Rick. No, laptop isn't fixed. Sorry about that, Panda. Tony said, hi David, it seems like we've reached the ceiling in lens focal length tech. With all of the manufacturers coming out with the same focal lengths, which one of them will come out with the 35 to 85 1.8? I know, that's why I keep saying, how many 35s do we need? And that, you know, it's interesting. Like, how many 50mm do we need? And you know, that is really interesting. Panda says he's depressed, can't work. Sorry about that, Panda. Gary said 1080p video is fine. I'm already with the dinosaurs. Nothing wrong with 1080p, Gary. The thing is too, and it's like I've said to people before, that I keep getting this every time I post a video about 4K, and everyone just goes, "Oh, no one has a 4K television." But look, it's irrelevant. I don't believe that's true anymore. I do believe that there is a mass market out there now for 4K televisions. Anyone buying a new television is going to be 4K. But that's not what it's about, guys. It's about being able to shoot in 4K to downsample to 1080p, which gives you a much better result. It's also about, do the test yourself. Shoot something in 1080p and have a look at it. Shoot something in 4K and then down-res it to 1080p, and you'll find that 1080p footage will look much sharper. It's much better. The other thing is too, you get the crop. You have the ability to crop it in 100%. It's like you've got multiple cameras. Now, if you're dealing with like I shoot, where I'm doing fusion at the same time as doing stills, having that ability to look like I've got multiple cameras shooting at the same time is unbelievable. So that part for me is amazing. But I can't shoot 4K at the moment because I love to shoot in 50p or 60p for you US people. Because I love to slow the footage down to 50%. I love to get that slow-mo looking wedding videos. It just looks beautiful. Well, to do that in 4K at the moment, you can't do it because the maximum in 4K for me is 24 frames per second. So I need 4K 60p or 50p. Then I can slow it down. And that's what I will. When that happens, I will be shooting in 4K. Definitely, but I can't do it at the moment. But don't think just because you haven't got a 4K TV, you don't need 4K footage. That's not what it's about, guys. It's about having the ability to shoot 8K and downsample to 1080p. Oh, here we go. So thanks, Mike. Mike says 422 preserves more color information. Okay, thank you, Michael. I knew we'd get some answer about this. AG Moore says 422 10-bit is good for pushing the colors in post. Okay, thanks. Like I said, I'm not a videographer. I classify myself as an artist, so I'm not into a lot of those terms for the videographer side. Subsvid says, hi David, what do you think about Camera Conspiracy's observation about the Sony mount overlapping the sensor, making stabilization limited? I haven't watched that video yet, Subs. I'll have to watch it. But I don't believe that stabilization is an issue for me at all. I handhold often, and the stabilization for me is good enough. He's probably right in a way, though, talking about, and this is where I believe that Nikon and Canon have an advantage with their new mounts being so much bigger, that it will give them the ability to perhaps do more things with stabilization eventually. But having said that, I never have an issue with it anyway. I can handhold my cameras and get really stable footage, but I've practiced it. If you practice it, you get great footage. I don't really think it's an issue, but everyone has different opinions. Sam said, with all the speculated features for the A7S III, there is no reason why Sony can't match price it close to the A9, as it's technically different for that purpose. I don't think the A7S III will be priced as dear as the A9. I think it will be around the A7R4, A7R3 price. The original price when it came out, though. That's what I think. I don't think they'll price it at the A9 range. It would have to be an A9S for them to do that, and I don't think that's going to happen, Sam. I believe it'll be like the price of the around the A7R3 price range. Like I said, yep, it's about better compression. 422, a ratio of sampling frequency for digital signal. Thanks for all of this, guys. The first number refers to the luminance part of the signal. The second to refer to the chroma. Oh, okay. Thanks. Therefore, better color preservation. Gene says, just finished work and got on the live. What's new coming? We just talked all about that, Gene. You might have to go back and watch it later. 35 1.8, I wish. Gary says, A7R III is absolutely over the top in image quality with the right lens is unbelievable. Smack me over the head resolution. Yeah, but I don't think the image quality is any better, Gary. Now, look, I suppose we can argue about this like day and night. I don't believe image quality has anything to do with resolution. I think they're two different things. I think if you're talking about image quality for me, is if you're looking at the color, if you're looking at the dynamic range, if you're looking how it looks when you look at it on a screen or get it printed. I'm not talking about blowing something up massive. If you're blowing something up massive, the A7R III will be better. And this is why I discussed this before. I don't think there's any difference in image quality between an A7 III and an A7R III. If you're dealing with looking at those images on a screen, if you're looking at those images printing at a normal size that you will print, I don't think there is any difference. The only real difference between the two of them is the A7 III has better dynamic range. That's proven. Look at DxOMark. The A7 III has better dynamic range. The A7R III will have better resolution if you need to crop. And they're two different things. They're not image quality. You may read image quality that way. I don't. But like I said, we all see and want different things. Philip says, what about the FE200 600mm lens? Well, all these lenses are starting to come. Hi, Michael. How are you? Panda says, I'm good. I'm good to try to go to David's house and borrow his camera. They're all locked in that big metal cupboard, Panda. Rick says, can someone suggest a good portrait lens for the A6000 A6500? Yes. Well, I can tell you what I love. I love the 55. That gives me the 85 focal length. So the beautiful 55mm Sony lens is fantastic. I also love this 28 too, the 1.8. That gives you the 35. Remember, I love 35 and 85. If you want a really nice lens too, you can put the Sony 85 and that will give you the 135mm focal length. That's also beautiful if you're dealing with focal length as well. Remember, you can use these great full frame lenses to stick on your A6500. The beauty is then you can put them onto your full frame cameras if you go full frame in the future. That's the way I tend to go now. I very rarely now buy APS-C lenses. I just buy full frame. Zaddy said, I got the A6500 and the 60mm Moza Aircross is amazing. I love the Moza Aircross. It's still my favourite gimbal. I recently reviewed for Moza the Moza Air 2 and I love that as well. But the Aircross is still my favourite gimbal. Zoe Moment says, Sam, the reason the red has to blow fan is not because of the sensor but actually the Kodak. Yeah, because it shoots RAW, doesn't it, too, as well? And that's one of the problems with the... Well, it's not a problem. It's great if you can do it. But, yeah, it's a totally different system. Jason said, have you had the chance to shoot with the Sigma 105? No, I haven't yet, Jason. I'm still trying to get someone that can give me those lenses to do a review of them. I'd love to try both of those. I'd love to try the Sigma 105 and the Sigma 135. So hard to get here in Australia. What else have we got? Quinton says, totally want the 8K sensor in the A7 series bodies. Kay says, hey Dave, what's your take on adapted lenses? I found the 16-35 and 70-200 by Canon at a very competitive price. I don't have the coin to drop the GM. Well, they work very well in stills, Kay. If you're dealing with videography, though, for tracking, they're just not as good, so that's something that you have to consider. If you're dealing with stills and you've got an A7 III or an A7R III or the A9, they work very, very well for stills. Really well, actually. Just not very good if you're dealing with... Look, I wouldn't say very good. They're just nowhere near as good as using Sony native lenses if you're dealing with tracking for video. If you're a photographer, I wouldn't hesitate. They can also apparently hunt a little bit if you're dealing with lower light as well, though. That's just something you've got to consider. They'll never work as well as Sony native lenses, but they are very good now. Jama said, my iMac will crash rendering 4K. Atalia says, hey, David, just got off the treadmill. Good to see you on here. Good to see you keeping fit. My TV programs on 4K are still bad. Raj said, do you think 16-bit sensor will cause serious dent to medium format cameras? Well, I just don't know if you... I mean, look, I used to shoot medium format when I used to shoot in studio years ago. I know a lot of people aren't going to be like me saying this. I just don't think you need it anymore. I don't believe you would really see much difference between shooting a Sony A7R III and something that's medium format. The A7R III files are incredible. You're going to get the 50 megapixel, 16 megapixel new Sony sensors soon. And why would you buy a medium format? I mean, look, they are still probably going to be a little bit better. You're paying for that, but I don't know. I reckon if you put one in between someone and they did a blind test, they wouldn't tell the difference. I know I'm going to get slammed for that, but oh well. As you said, I have both the A7R Mark III and the A7 III, but can't make up my mind which I love more. I probably could have saved more if the A7 Mark III came out first. And you either need the resolution or you don't. This is why I'm saying to you that the quality for me would be the same. There'd be no difference. It's just you've got resolution on the A7R III. You can crop in. Things like that are much better. If you need resolution, you know, like you were shooting landscape and you want to see the detail in each individual leaf, well, you need the A7R III for that. Aaron says, downsampling to 4K 1080p gives you a much wider colour gamut. You get a much better result, Aaron. I agree with you. Oops. Carlton says, how good is the HD on the A7 III as opposed to the 4K downsample? It's okay, but you do get, it's a much better result shooting 1080p, Carlton, much better. You'd notice a difference, put it that way. Panda says, I'll find a way into that metal cabinet. Zaddy said, the new 56 Sigma looks like a good option. Yeah, I haven't looked at that. Gene says, Rick Tucker says, I hear good things about the new Sigma 56. And that would be a great lens for portraiture as well, Gene. Yeah, fantastic. That's why I love my 55 as well, and that's 1.4, so it probably would be a great lens. Hero says the 56 is overpriced. Okay, how much is it? Dale says if you downsample the A7R III to the A7 III resolution, the noise is almost identical, and the A7R III image is noticeably sharper. You can do a side-by-side comparison on DPR review. The Panda says, yes, as a red user in the past, it shoots raw. Yep. Nick said, I hope they release a reasonably priced 200 to 600 5.6 lens for the A7000. I know how good would that be for wildlife. It would be incredible. Especially if you get the A9AF, yes. Young Blaze says, hey, just wanted to let you know I love you. I love you too, Young Blaze. Thank you so much for that. MK said, handhold and get good footage. Really, even walking? Well, yes, I can, but I don't walk with it, no. If I'm walking, I'm using a gimbal. I'm talking about hand-holding. Yeah, I do it all the time, MJ. But I've got very good at it with practice. It does take practice, and I need a stabilised lens, though. That's the trick. You need a stabilised lens to get really good at it. Where were we? I've showed videos about that too, where I've captured the dance video during receptions, and I've changed from shooting stills to video, and I've handheld it. Yeah, great results. What's we got? Joe said, "Come on, America, and you can come to America, and you can try my 135." I might come to America next year, Joe. Taylor says, have you ever dabbled with underwater photography? No, but you know what? I'm thinking about doing a model shoot. I am thinking about doing a model shoot this summer, actually, underwater. So I'm going to give it a go about that. I'm not sure yet what camera I'll use, though. Viking says, I bet Sony is going to come out with a new bigger mount like the E-mount. It would allow the bigger mount for better IBIS, bigger sensors, etc. I'm not sure, though. You know, the thing is to... Don't get too sort of up onto this IBIS. I think what you're probably going to find too, with technology, as technology comes in, you're going to have a mixture between the AI in the camera and also the IBIS. As technology gets better and better, the electronic stabilization is probably going to be just as good. So these are things that you're going to have to consider. Remember, if you go to 8K, then you've got much better, you could do much better stabilization in the sensor. These are things that you're going to have to think about for the future. So I wouldn't get too ed up on that. I'm happy with the Sony IBIS the way it is. And really, like I said, it's fantastic on a gimbal, which I mostly use anyway. It's good enough that I can handhold it if I need to. I'm quite happy with it. And remember, I came from the GH5, which had probably the best IBIS out there, like Olympus. And I'm still getting really good handheld footage. So, not walking though, no. I mean, I don't walk with it. I didn't walk with the GH5 either. The Sigma is still half the price of the 51.8. Okay. From what I've seen from it, it isn't much better than the 51.8. The Panda says, I just need to make someone laugh. I just need to make someone laugh. Been a hard 2 days for me, but at least I got to have someone laugh. Nick says, I have the A7 III and the A7R III. I plan to use the new 24GM Master 1.4 on the A7R III and use the crop to give me a 36 1.4. Not my idea, I saw it on YouTube vid recently. Kay said, Mark, thanks for sharing. I'm really on the short side of the budget to have a little bit of flexibility on the set to get used to the focal length and maybe upgrade later. Yeah, and I can understand that everyone has a budget that they've got to stick to. G'day, Funamic, how are you? What else have we? Dislike Canon has better color science. Oh, God. Kay says, I already have the G24105 for video. I need to have a better mix on focal lengths, though. I'm keen to try a few adapted lenses. I love the Tamron. I do love the Tamron 28-75, and I adore that for on gimbals. It's so light, Kay. It's hard, though, I suppose, to justify if you already have the 24-105. But I do love the look of that 28-75 at 2.8. I adore it. If you look at the videos I've been posting, check the recent wedding video I just did with it. That was with the Tamron 28-75, and I did that with that lens, and I adored it. If you're dealing with video, you could probably almost sell the 24-105, get the Tamron, and then you'd have enough to buy another lens. Hero said, greetings. Vanamix saying, oh, really well. I'm not sure what that was. Viking Studio says, but coming out with a big amount also allows them to offer ND filters and stuff like the ESR has. Yeah, but they don't need a big amount to offer an ND in the lens. They can do that like they do with the RX100. There's no reason why they can't do the same type of system as that. I don't think you're going to see a new lens mount for Sony. I mean, I just don't think that's going to happen. Jason said, still waiting on Nikon to show proof of the benefits of the larger mounts. Dave Sincere here saying hi. What other ones have we got? Delta Dave said, Canon color science is superior when shooting brick walls. I love that. It always comes back to me. It cracks me up. If the IBIS is theoretically worse, I'd rather have a place to put my fingers than the E-mount provides on the current alphas without the increased body size. Hero says, yeah, we have fanboying over how Sony rules and Nikon drools. Photomex says, Jason, the bigger mount allowed for better IBIS already proven and sharper lenses as shown. Jason said, Canon color science is superior when you label a picture shot with Canon. Wow, just a bit over midnight. Great time for us in the UK. Jason, sharper than what? Can you tell me what to Google for both of these points? Michael just said SMH. And I've caught up with everyone. And that's about it, guys. Any last questions before I pop out for my morning coffee and my usual socialising on Facebook and Instagram? 3 a.m. lives are killing us. That's why I thought I'd pop in earlier for you guys. Hero said, Nikon is going to have that 0.65 lens. I'm going to have to trade my truck in to get it. I love it. Do you know what? Look, I want to talk to you about something here too. And I'm probably going to even change the way that I'm starting to shoot because, and I'd love to know what you think about this, guys. Let's have another discussion. I might even talk about this in a video, but I think bokeh is starting to get ridiculous. Now, what I'm saying, I just did say to you before that I'd love the Canon 85 1.2. Now, I want to get that for a certain shot, but what I'm starting to do is I'm starting to shoot at more closed down. Now, what I'm talking about there is 5.6 and things like that. Now, the reason why I'm starting to change the way I'm thinking is that I'm starting to think that I want to show a bit more of the environment. Now, particularly in things like weddings and things like that, that it's nice to show sometimes they have the beautiful locations that they go to, and then you can still see the background and still see what's there. The issue is I think we've gone the opposite way where we want to blow everything out and make everything this bokeh that no one can actually see anything. And I think photography is suffering a little bit to that. Now, I'm going to start changing, and I want to challenge you guys to also think about this as well, because everyone at the moment has jumped to this wide open bokeh bandwagon. I'd love you people to start thinking about this a little bit differently to make a point of difference. start to think about, I might start shooting at 5.6 to make my images look different to everyone else's. Now, I can guarantee that a lot of clients are going to love when they can see these beautiful backgrounds that you go to and they can actually see it. Like, you know, if you're shooting in this gorgeous location and all of a sudden you shoot it at f1.2, you can't see where it is. You might as well be shooting in a car park. So I want to start challenging you people to think that way. Start to think about that. I need to be shooting with a more closed down aperture. Now, why I started to think this way, because I'm not sure whether you know a photographer called Yervant. Yervant is probably one of the best wedding photographers in the world. He's a local. He lives near me in Melbourne, actually. And I went to a workshop of his recently, and he said to me that he very rarely shoots lower than 5.6. And that really had me thinking, you know, and I spoke to him a little bit later and said, Yervin, what do you mean by that? Why are you doing this? And he said, well, David, he said, my brides pay for these beautiful locations. They want to go to Melbourne. They want to see these gorgeous locations. Why would you blow those locations out? What's your thinking that you want to not see these gorgeous locations? And this is a challenge I want you guys to think about now too. And I have started to do it, that it might be time that we start to change things and think about shooting images with not so wide open, because everything is starting to look the same. And I do believe that's true now. And I do think that we are now starting to shoot the same. And I might even bring out a video talking about this. But I think a lot of images now are all starting to look the same. They're all 1.4. They're all got these bokeh balls. And everyone's talking about how smooth the bokeh is. And I'm just a bit over it, to be honest, and I'm starting to get bored with it. Now, if I'm getting bored with it, are other people starting to get bored with it? And when Yervant said that to me, and I really do admire Yervant, I thought, wow, that's potentially changing the way that I'm thinking. So have a think about that and let me know in the comment box down below. I'd love to know what you think about that. All right, let me just quickly go for these questions before we finished. Where were we? Nikon is going to have... Oh, yeah, we talked about that before. Everyone is always looking for some reason their brand has an eye edge, but in the end, nobody looks at the photo and says that. Well, that was just been recently proved, hasn't it? When they did the colour test, honestly. All of these doctors without degrees. Exactly. What do you think of Fuji X-T3? Love it. I think it's a great camera in space. I really do think that's an amazing release. Conrad says, thanks, David. Blaze King said, DJ Pocket Osmo or go home. Hero says, now that iPhones can make fake bokeh the art of blurry backgrounds. And that's a great comment, Hero. You can do it in an iPhone. Exactly. Think about your composition. Think about your art, guys. Don't just think that a 1.2 lens is going to make you a photographer. And every time I see on the thing, like on the Facebook groups, oh, look at the bokeh on this, and oh my, and you know what? Half the time, it looks, I'm not saying it looks terrible, but it looks like it's been superimposed. This is the problem you deal with. When you shoot these real shallow depth of fields, it looks like you've superimposed it and made a composite image. And that's a great comment, Hero, that they can do it now in phones. See, Bond says, can never get enough bokeh, and some people do think like that. Extreme bokeh equals lazy to find a good background. Interesting point. James said, bokeh is overrated. My client don't care about bokeh. They want expression. I love a little bit, and this is why I'm saying I do like still, this is why I love my 70-200 f4. I really do like that lens because I don't have to shoot at 2.8 to get nice backgrounds, but I don't want to completely obliterate the background. I still want to see a little bit there, you know. When I'm shooting these laneways in Melbourne and I've got the graffiti in the background, what's the point of shooting in a graffiti laneway if you can't see it's graffiti? If it's just completely bokeh and it's all smooth, you know. This is why I'm saying challenge yourself, guys. Try and think a little bit differently. Just had a donation too. I better thank EJ. MJ, thank you so much, MJ. Coffee's on me. Thank you so much. Where were we? Patna says, "Oh boy." Well, I know I'm going to get, you know what, I'm going to get slammed for this bokeh statement because there's so many people just like bokeh and they love it. I know it's going to come back and get me. I like dropping it to f5 and get some trees back there too. Yeah, I like to show some background. I do. I love it. I only care about bokeh and macro photography. Blaze King said you need 0.95 in the UK. Is that because of the light? Flying High says in beauty shots I'm shooting f11. Yep, I usually shoot f8 to f9. Exactly. Aaron says for sure stop down. I don't go to beautiful places to blur it out. But this is what's happening, Aaron. I'm seeing your beautiful images you've been putting up of all of Europe, and I can see all of the background. You know, like these people, they'll buy a 1.4 lens and they'll only shoot with 1.4. They'll have an 85 1.4. The Eiffel Tower will be in the background and you can't see it. And it cracks me up. I mean, I've always liked to see the background, but Jurgen did make me think about changing the way I shoot for weddings because he's right what he's saying. You know, the brides hire these beautiful places and you're blowing it all out and you can't see it. Bokeh has been pushed by YouTubers, and I agree, you're right. It has. Joe says, totally agree. Joe says, love the environment in my image. It's the revolution against bokeh. This is going to come back like my wall episode, isn't it? It's going to come back like my photographing walls. I know it. Jason said, buy the 1.4 lenses to blur the poor people away when you shoot in mirror locations. I love it. Blaze King said, revolt. Zoe Moment says, background blur is overrated. And this is the funny thing that when... who was it that posted that video the other day? I think it was Max. I'm not sure. Talking about the electronic shutter. And I laughed because I thought, seriously, when people are looking at an image like he showed, which was showing a fraction difference between the two backgrounds. Now, I like Max, but I think it was Max that showed it. And he was saying that, you know, he was disappointed because he wasn't really getting the bokeh that he paid for. And I'm going, oh my God. It's about the image, guys. It's all about the art. A client is not going to give a rat's ass whether you're seeing a fraction different in the bokeh. I have to tell you this. They're not going to give a hoot. And everyone's then going, oh, should I turn the electronic first curtain shutter off? You know, should I leave it on? Should I leave it off? And I'm just going, oh, no, you know, here we go. There's that many pixel peepers out there. Your clients will not care. James says, yes, he's a man, Jurgen. Yeah, great bloke and brilliant photographer. Fast glass is not just about bokeh. No, and it's not. And I use open glass all the time when I'm in low light. Hello from South Carolina. Hero says, shooting at 5.6 makes my 55 to 2 King lens kit have a life again. I shoot a lot at 5.6. I do too now, Aaron, as well. Axiom says, go alpha or go home. James says, I shoot f4 a lot. Blaze King says, bokeh has been a great way to get us to pay for expensive glass marketing, folks. Panda put a thing there talking about his latest video. Where were we? Where was I up to? I have to scroll down. I'm not sure where I was. Zoe Moments said, 5.6, nice sharp images, more detail, and makes you shoot differently. You start to think more about your lighting techniques. Hypernorius, is it? Hypernorius? I'm not sure how you pronounce that. David, this is brilliant. You just saved one of my kids. I wanted to spend for Christmas on the 85. My kit lens just became the best lens I've ever needed. I'm not, look guys, please do not take this that I'm saying you don't need fast glass. You do. I use my 1.4 and I love it to be able to shoot wide open in dark areas and to be able to let that light come in. But I don't need to be close to the object where you're totally blurring out the background. I often use 1.4 in receptions and everything is still in focus because I'm far enough away not to worry about it. You need fast glass so you can lower your ISO. Don't get confused between the two. I just think the problem is we've all become so obsessed with blowing backgrounds out. The bokeh, the shape of the bokeh balls. We've become obsessed with it and we've lost the art. And this is what I'm trying to say to you. We've lost the art of looking for decent backgrounds, showing the background, Find an amazing location with beautiful light in the background. You know, you don't go to the Eiffel Tower and then blow that Eiffel Tower out because you don't want to show it. I mean, that's nuts. This is what you've got to start thinking about. If you have a lovely background, show it. Stop this thing on Facebook of, oh my God, the bokeh in this image looks good. They don't even care about the main subject of the image. All they care about is that the background has this smooth, out of focus background. It's just something I'd like you to think about. Blaze King said, creamy buttery bokeh balls. Oh, God. Carlton said, do you ever film in 30p mode on the A7 III? Yeah, I do. I mostly shoot in 50p though, Carlton. So I'm mostly 50. If I was in the US, I'd be shooting 60. But that's just the look that I like. How well does the crop affect your Tamron 28 to 75? Well, if you're dealing with full frame, there isn't a crop. I see what you're saying. Yeah, but here in Australia, you don't get the crop. We don't get that crop here in Australia. I think you only get that in the US. We don't get it here because it's 24p here and I don't get it. I'm laughing at Delta Dave says, what did Delta Dave say? Where were we? Delta Dave says 1.4 glass is a chiropractor's conspiracy. Aaron says, it's funny because I have that bokeh subject on my must-make video list. Yeah, and I might do it too, Aaron, so we both might. So the whole point of 2.8 and below is for really low light. Exactly, and that's it. You do need fast glass for low light. And there are occasions where having a nice background out of focus like that is beautiful. I'm not saying you don't use it. I'm just saying think about using it not all the time like everyone seems to be doing. I want my lens to look like it was wiped down with... I don't even know what that means. Thank you so much, MJ, for the donation. Michael said, David, you make great images, and it's all about you being whatever that is, and it can change as you want it to be you. Exactly, Michael, I agree. James said, when you shoot at higher aperture, it forces you to think about the composition of the shot. Hero says, you can even make bokeh in the Lightroom even though there isn't any lights in the background. Dion says, why pay for 1.8 or 2.8 lens and shoot at 5.6? Due to the fact, Dion, the issue is here. It's not, you're paying for 1.8 to have that ability to do that. Also, you've got 1.8 in case if you need to shoot low light, which means you can lower the ISO. It doesn't mean you have to shoot everything at 1.8. Remember, like I've just said to you, if you have a gorgeous background, this is what Yervant said. And Yervant, I really believe is probably the best wedding photographer out there. I love his work. I adore it. Him and Jerry Guionis, they're two Aussies. But he said to me, his exact thing was, I shoot at 5.6, very rarely go below 5.6 because I want to show these beautiful backgrounds where the brides are in. And that, I thought, he's right what he's saying. You don't always have to blow the background out. And this is what I'm trying to say to you. So you can have a 1.8 lens, but you don't need to use it every time. Quinton said, bokeh has a time and place in photos. It's not for every photo and scene. I agree, Quinton. Bokeh is great for rubbish bins. There's so many more creative decisions and closing down the lens. David, you bring up great valid points. Axiom says, I shoot f4 when shooting tourist couple. James said, photomic, brass the drunkenness, and I'm not sure. Altric says, yep, it is. That's why I shoot at f4. When making movies, make it so that everyone else than yourself thinks it's exciting. Blur backgrounds are something that belongs to portraits, weddings and cinema films. Delta Dave said, once the 85 1.2 to blur out the brand of his coffee. And I do want that lens, but I want it for an occasional look. Casper said, I challenged myself to use the inferior Z toy camera. Oh, you're going to upset Photomic again. Dale said computational bokeh should be called... I've gone on long again. I only wanted this to be a really quick discussion today. When shooting brick walls, F11 is so great in the shape. Oh, no. Manny. Oh, was it Manny that said that? I couldn't remember who said it. Yeah, sorry, Manny. I just don't agree with it. Photomic says, Casper, shut your mouth. You secretly love Nikon and you know it. Camera Conspiracies was all over this one. Blasphemy, I love bokeh. What's the name of that photographer again? Yervant. Yes, Yervant. Amazing photographer. Have Google his images and you'll see what I mean. Pictures need different f-stops more than they one way to skin a cat. Photography is about creativity. Don't be a clone or creator. And this is what I was trying to say, Michael, that everyone now seems to be shooting the same images. And this is what, it starts to get a little bit boring. And I do it too. I'm not saying that I don't do it either. I do. And I want to challenge myself to start using these, you know, like 5.6 and see what I can get. And you know what? It might give your images a point of difference like Yervant has. Just think about it. E-curtain turned on. I've got E-curtain turned on as well. I only ever turn it off if ever I have problems. And you know what? I've never had problems, so it's never been turned off. Hello from southeastern suburbs of Melbourne. Hi, Sean. I always have to troll Photomic when you live stream about switching to Sony. Bokeh or bust. I love it. And then Photomic said 5.6. Ew. He would be shooting that way sometimes too. What else? YouTube stop sucking. Did you use the word damn? YouTube might demonetize. Oh, well, if they do, they do. I got fever and only cure is more bokeh. Photomic, for the record, I've done shoots with micro four third cameras and the A6 300 with the kit lens, so I know better and know how to reply on full frame 1.4. Oh, while you're here, Photomic, I just wanted to know, I watched your video and liked it, the one you just compared the A7 III with the Z6, the Z6. I just wanted to ask, because I thought I'd ask you because you're in, why did they use the 51.8 lens, that Sony? Because I don't like that lens, I hate it. I just wondered why you use that lens. Let us know in the live chat. Every photography bright sunny day, 5.6 to 6.3. Where are we? Photomic said I shot a wedding with a Sigma 24-104 f4 lens, exactly. No, it's Yervant. Y-E-R-V-E-N-T. The Panda photographer said, someone blame that. I'm not going to say that. Oh, Jason's a nice guy. Where are we? Robert says, hello from New York City. Just want to tell you I bought my Sony A7 III and the Sony 85 1.4 GM. I'm so happy that I got rid of your 16 Mark II. Photomic says, haha, Jason Lanier has to shoot at 1.4 because he needs as much light as possible. With those roto neo lights. Oh, God, you guys. Oh, boy. Oh, that's so funny. Love you, Jason. Yeah, I like Jason too. Jason would laugh about that comment anyway. For sure, although I do use my Roto Neolite occasionally. I've got two of them. I don't really use them though. It's yervantphotography.com. Yep. Manny, not Max. Yeah, thanks, Photomic. I wasn't sure who did it. If you shoot with E first curtain shutter and HSS, you will get sensor lines in your image. Yeah, I don't, Delta Dave. I haven't seen it. And I also don't get any issues with my Profoto gear either. It doesn't have that sync problem that you have with other flashes. And I've never seen those sensor lines in any image, so I'm not sure why I'm not getting it. I don't know. Oh, using a speed light, you're saying. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I see, I don't use speed lights anymore. I always use a Profoto, so... but I've never even had to worry about the sync. The issue is if you're shooting over 1,000th of a second, they do say that you should probably turn electronic shutter off, and then, because you will get that banding that can start to appear on your images. I haven't seen that with my Profoto, so I've never had to worry about turning it off. I like it being on because you don't get the shutter shock, and that's the best thing about having that turned on. You don't get that shutter shock that you'll get. Remember, everyone whinged about the A7R due to the fact of that clunky shutter, and that came about because of that not having the electronic first curtain shutter. That's what Manny was getting confused, because he kept saying he was terming that video mechanical shutter, and it's not what it was. It was the EFS, it was electronic first curtain shutter. It was actually labeled wrong, that video, and I hope people didn't get confused over that. Viking says, in studio, I almost never go lower than F4. I'm usually F8, F9 in studio. Almost done, David. Only 2 more hours to go. No, how long have I been on? I was going to make it... Oh, it's 1 hour 43. I was going to make this a quick one. Oh. Photomix says, laugh out loud, Viking. Stay at 2.8 in my basement studio. Panga said, I always disable E-curtain shirting when doing portraits with speed lights. Yeah, I never change it, ever. Haas says, Manny said it was only if you shoot over 1/1000th regarding the electronic and mechanical. But see, it's not that. He's got to not use that term, Haas. It's got nothing to do with electronic shutter. It's electronic first curtain. It's a totally different thing. Johnson City says, yeah, Viking, same with me, and bracketing photos for real estate, F8 and out. Dion says, rotolights are good for workshops where there is more than one photographer. Yeah, I've got 2 of them and I don't use them. I prefer the ice lights, but that's a personal choice, Dion. Some love them, I agree with you. I don't like them though. I mean, look, I shouldn't say I don't like them. I just don't think they're very good. And I've got 2. Hero says, I like that no recycle HSS for roto lights. Just wish they had more power. Johnson City says, haha, Dion, I call mine the most expensive camping tent light. Yeah, they're not very bright. I have a question about my A7 III and taking photos with the flash. Can you tell me why it is that sometimes the shutter button don't fire? It's like blocked sometimes. No. You can, if you've turned electronic first curtain off, you can get that delay, and that's one problem as well. If you've got that turned off, that could be causing that. I'm not sure why you would get that. Oh, thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate that. It was worth staying on. Viking said 2.8 works in pretty good in small place. Hello, David. How you doing? Great, David. Photomir, yo, James. Kizzy is in town, and we plan on getting together on Friday. That's about it. And Michael just gave the donation. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. Look, we had a great talk. I was only coming on for 30 minutes, and we've done 1 hour 45 again. Been a great discussion. I had a ball with you guys. I'm now going to go and get my coffee. I think I deserve it. So what to do now? Well, you can listen in shortly, about an hour or so. Jason and Danny will be on. So you'll be able to watch their live show coming up in about an hour, I believe. Rotolights is a great idea, but in real life shooting, they just can't beat monolight. They can't, and that's the thing. I also have to be honest with you, I prefer the Profoto B10. The light in that is much nicer, and I've been using that a lot. I take the Neo Rotolight so when I'm doing receptions, and I have them at both sides of the reception so that I can do video. That's really the only time I use them. I'm very lucky in the fact that I have ice lights as well. I mean, I don't recommend you buy ice lights because you can buy the Godox ones now that are probably just as good and much, much cheaper, but they're the similar design. But I definitely prefer the look of ice lights. I like how long they are, and it's a much more even light than having just a small round light like the Neos are. But again, it's like what I say, it's what I prefer. Dion, I think, has Neo lights, and he probably loves them. I just don't like them that much, and I don't find them bright enough. Yeah, I don't like them that much at all, really. Where are we before we finish? Delta Dave says, I can shoot HSS with my strobes and don't get the sensor lines I do with my speed lights. Why I quit using speed lights? Interesting. What else are we? Casper said, good show. Thanks, Casper. Hero said, can any speed light or monolight do HSS as long as the trigger is... No, it has to be a speed light capable of doing HSS because it has to be able to strobe, Hero. It gives out a strobe instead of a flash. That's why they lose so much power. Taylor says, happy holidays. Always a great stream. Thank you. Dronkhurst says, I mean what I can do to make the delay gone. I'm not sure because I'm not sure why you're getting a delay. That's about it. I have the AD600 and the AD200. Yep, exactly, Dion. Hope you're feeling better, Dion, too. All right, guys, I'll see you. Now, Dion, let me know, too, whether you are going to have the meetup in the coffee shop, because if you are, I might pop down on Saturday. All right, guys, I'll see you all in the next video. I think it's coffee time for me. And stay tuned. I'll have a couple of not when I say live shoots, I've got a couple of model shoots I want to post during the week. And obviously I'll see you on Friday for the normal Sony Alpha rumors and news. All right, guys, that's all for now. Catch you all later. Bye for now.